I acquired that book probably 30 or more years ago. It says it was printed in 1976. It's almost 1,300 pages, but it's fantastic reading. I've been through it a couple of times, not in a long while, but I always enjoyed Mark Twain's writing. Vonnegut sometimes made me think of him. In fact, the intro to this is written by Kurt Vonnegut. He has a connection with Buffalo, not Vonnegut, but Mark Twain has a connection with Buffalo, New York. Had a connection, I should say, since he's been gone more than 100 years. He was editor and part owner of the Buffalo Express. It was a daily newspaper back in, well, this was in 1870. He was in Buffalo for 1.5 to 2 years. He owned a third of the paper. He was publisher, editor, and he wrote many columns for the paper. And he wrote those in the beginning of his style, his stylings, his ways of lampooning people in situations while still presenting characters that are sort of endearing. If you think about some of the things that he has written, books or stories that you've probably read. Anyway, I haven't read Twain in a long time. But I just this past week finished reading the Autobiography of Mark Twain. It was written from dictations that he did, from, I guess, 1905 to 1909 or so. And at the time that he was done with those dictations, he said, "This is not to be published for 100 years. I guess so that he couldn't be accused of libeling or slandering anyone at the time. Because he does like to poke. He pokes fun at people. He pokes fun at himself sometimes. Now, in the autobiography, it does not have any real chronological order. It's as he dictates. And sometimes he'll go off on a tangent. He'll go back 30 years or 60 years. 60 years? Yeah, sure, because he was like 75 or so when he died. But it's a fantastic read. So when I was done with it, and I read it on the Nook, and there were a few citations in it, some footnotes with a little bit of historical background, but not much. But there was a reference to marktwainproject.org, and a link to it, so I checked it out. And I'd forgotten I had been there a long time ago. Well, the Mark Twain Project was started around 1966. See, what happened was his papers were donated to the University of California by his daughter. And in 1966, they set a goal of collecting all of his works, as much of his works as they could acquire. Things written about him, articles written about him, his own correspondence, relevant photos, news features, that sort of thing. Yeah, and then I guess about 11 years ago, they started working on the project of the autobiography. And Volume 1 was printed in 2010. So I finished reading that, and I went to marktwainproject.org. And as it turns out, Volumes 1 and 2 are both available to read online. And it's a nice reader. You scroll down within each, quote, chapter, within its headings, and there is a right-hand border which also has a scroll bar that allows you to read citations that are referenced in the body. So it is pretty cool, and they're much more extensive notations. For instance, one line or 4 lines or something may be bracketed in blue. You go over and look at the citation, and there could be paragraphs talking about some history around that particular reference. So I thought it was pretty interesting. If that's the sort of thing that interests you, Mark Twain was a fantastic author, and to see his style of writing, speaking of himself in his own life, is really pretty. It's neat. It's pretty neat. And I say that he jumps back and forth. He may pause, and then all of a sudden start talking about something that's in the news at that time, and he rips people. He's not afraid to. At the end of the book, and at least in the reader, there was a listing of media praise. Basically reviews from media, from news, online, that sort of thing. And to paraphrase, one of the people basically said that Mark Twain was the Jon Stewart of his time. And yeah, it shows in his writing. It's pretty cool. So if you get an opportunity, I mean, if that's sort of the thing that interests you, check it out. The Mark Twain Project. MarkTwainProject.org. Yeah. Cool. So I don't plan on digging back into this anytime soon. That Volume 1 was 760 pages. I'm just starting to read Volume 2 online. In fact, it's so good with those citations that I may go into Volume 1 online just to read the citations, you know, some of that historical background behind some of what he's talking about. It's pretty cool. Check it out, folks. MarkTwainProject.org. Ciao. Vlog on.